I began my journey as one of the island's most iconic herbivores, a stegosaurus. Looking at the adults, it was hard to imagine that one day I could become that large, or that dangerous. But before I could even think about adulthood, I had a much more immediate problem. Soon after reaching 25% growth, our parents left us behind. One by one, they disappeared beyond the wall, leaving the younger members of the herd no protection, no guidance, just a group of young stegos trying to survive. And our real journey was about to begin. With the adults gone, it was time to take my first steps on my own. I left the safety of our nesting grounds and began exploring the area beyond the wall. For now, survival meant focusing on the basics: water, food, growth. Every plant I found brought me one step closer to adulthood, and every minute survived made me a little harder to kill. Before long, I had completed the requirements needed to become prime. But on this island, growth rarely goes unnoticed. Somewhere nearby, something had already started watching us. It didn't take long for the first threat to reveal itself. A pair of Troodons had been stalking the area, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One of them made a mistake. The moment it committed to an attack, my companion landed a perfect hit. Just like that, one predator was dead, but the second Troodon was different. It was patient. It never rushed in, never stayed exposed for long. It used the darkness, the terrain, and every patch of cover to its advantage. Again and again, it darted in for a bite before disappearing back into the shadows. We tried to catch it countless times, but it always seemed to be one step ahead. What looked like a simple fight turned into a battle of endurance. Eventually, the fight dragged on for so long that I was forced to leave my companion behind and search for water before dehydration finished me off. When I returned, the fight was still going. The Troodon had spent the entire night harassing us, waiting for a mistake. Bite after bite, it kept testing our defenses. Only when the first light of dawn appeared did the attacks finally stop. My companion was covered in wounds, but he had survived. Knowing the predator could return at any moment, we quickly left the area and made our way toward the volcano. After everything that had happened, we finally reached the volcano and took a much-needed drink. My companion was in no condition to keep moving. Covered in wounds and exhausted from the night's battle, he decided to stay behind and wait for his friend. We wished each other luck and went our separate ways. I still needed food, so I set off alone into the forest. That's when a familiar face appeared. This time, I was on my own. No companion, just the two of us. It circled around me, looking for an opening. But after spending an entire night dealing with its tricks, I knew exactly what to expect, so I stayed calm. And eventually, the Troodon made the mistake I had been waiting for. One swing was all it took. The hunt was finally over. After growing a little more, I decided it was time to leave the quieter parts of the island behind. If I wanted to test my strength, I needed to go where the action was, so I headed toward Delta River. Before reaching my destination, I came across a young stegosaurus being hunted by a Ceratos. The little Stego stayed close, hoping I could keep the predator away. The Ceratos kept pushing its luck, looking for an opening. Then it made a mistake. One well-placed swing was all it took. With the danger gone, I invited the young Stego to join me. Together, we continued our journey toward Delta River. As we continued toward Delta River, we ran into another stegosaurus. After a quick introduction, he joined our group. What had started as a solo journey was slowly turning into a herd. Delta River was exactly what I expected. Dino in the water, Ceratos nearby. Everywhere I looked, predators were competing for territory, food, and survival. Places like this never stay quiet for long, so when trouble finally found us, I wasn't surprised at all. Here we go, my first encounter with a pair of Rexes, and hopefully not my last. The fight wasn't going well. My legs were broken, and I was barely able to keep up. But the Rexes hadn't escaped unscathed. I'd landed enough hits to make them bleed. At that point, I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was trying to outlast them. If I could keep the pressure on, one of those wounds might prove fatal. One of the Rexes was bleeding badly. He needed to rest. I needed to keep him moving. The problem was, my broken leg was draining my stamina fast. The Rexes retreated to a small island nearby, hoping to get a moment of rest. I couldn't follow them alone, so I asked the younger Stegos to keep the pressure on. And to their credit, they did exactly that. It worked. The Rexes never got the rest they needed, but the price was high. One of the young Stegos was killed. The other barely made it back, dragging himself to safety with a broken leg. One of the Rexes decided to swim across the river. Let's hope the dinos were still around. Well, it looks like someone was watching. We couldn't see what happened beneath the surface, but the sound told us everything we needed to know. And just like that, one of the Rexes disappeared. Only seconds later, the dino made its move on the second Rex. A single bite was all it needed. The wound was enough to make him bleed out. With the Rexes gone, the battle was finally over. But surviving the fight was only half the challenge. I was badly injured. My body was fractured, my legs were fractured, and I could barely keep moving. Slowly, I headed toward the rocks, searching for cover from the Ceratosaurus. Right now, all I needed was a chance to rest. As soon as I got the opportunity, I retreated from the river and disappeared into the nearby vegetation. There, I remained hidden until my fractures had fully healed. Unfortunately, the damage wasn't entirely temporary. The fight had left me with the glass bones. It was permanent. From that moment on, breaking bones would become much easier, and every future battle would be far more dangerous. I spotted another Stego being chased by two Rexes. I offered to fight alongside him, but he had no stamina left. There was nothing I could do. I had to run. While resting, I noticed a Rex making a determined journey into the middle of nowhere, straight into the deep water. That's usually a pretty good indication that the server has crashed. I knew exactly what was waiting for me when I logged back in. A Rex. But if I wanted to improve as a stegosaurus, these were the fights I needed to take. So I returned to the server. I came back expecting a fight. What I didn't expect was another 2-on-1. Looking back, I made a lot of mistakes here. After landing a few hits, I should have disengaged. Instead, I chased the Rex, missed my shots, and burned through my stamina. While I should have stayed near the water and the rocks, I moved into the open instead. Another mistake. It allowed the Rexes to land a few more hits, and before long, my leg was broken again. They were bleeding badly. But unlike the last fight, I was alone. I had no way of forcing them to keep moving. Knowing I couldn't keep the pressure on, I climbed onto the rocks and looked for a place to recover. The Rexes quickly figured out my plan. One of them focused on recovering from the bleed, while the other made sure I couldn't recover at all. Every time I tried to rest, it was right there waiting for me. By this point, the stalemate had gone on for far too long. My food was running low, my water was running low, and I couldn't stay there forever. So I made my move, fully aware it might be my last. The Rexes won this time, but every fight teaches a lesson, and I learned plenty from this one. Thanks for watching.